She stays in your mind because she disrupted your inner balance, and this is where most men misunderstand what is happening inside them. They assume it is love, attraction, or fate. Stoic psychology would say otherwise. The Stoics believed that the human mind seeks stability above all else. When that stability is broken, the mind becomes restless, looping thoughts again and again, not to suffer you, but to protect you. When a woman enters your life and awakens emotions you believed were controlled, buried, or irrelevant, she does not simply become a person in your memory. She becomes a disturbance in your internal order. And the mind, by nature, cannot tolerate disorder. Before her, your emotional world may have felt predictable. You knew who you were, how you reacted, what you wanted, and how much power you believed you had over your desires. Then she appeared and challenged that illusion. Maybe she didn't do it intentionally. Maybe she simply existed in a way that exposed parts of you that had been asleep. Confidence you didn't expect to feel shaken. Desire you thought you had mastered resurfaced. Fear of loss, fear of inadequacy, fear of not being chosen, all emotions Stoicism warns about suddenly stood in front of you. And once the mind tastes imbalance, it seeks resolution, not escape. Stoic thinkers like Epictetus taught that disturbance does not come from events, but from our judgments about those events. The woman is not the cause of your obsession. Your interpretation of what she represented is. She may have represented validation at a time when you doubted yourself. She may have represented emotional safety when you felt isolated. Or she may have represented chaos in a life that had become rigid and numb. Whatever the case, the moment she altered your emotional equilibrium, your mind marked her as significant. This is why time does not erase her easily. Time does not heal what has not been understood. The mind replays her image, her words, her absence, not because it misses her presence, but because it is attempting to regain control. Control over emotion is central to Stoic philosophy. When you lose control internally, the mind searches externally for the source. She becomes the symbol of that loss of control. There is also the issue of suppressed emotion. Many men pride themselves on emotional restraint. Stoicism is often misunderstood as emotional suppression, but true Stoicism is emotional mastery, not denial. If you suppressed vulnerability, affection, or emotional openness for years and she triggered those feelings effortlessly, the shock to your system was profound. The mind does not forget what bypassed its defenses. It returns to it repeatedly, trying to understand how something so guarded could be accessed so easily. She may have made you feel seen in a way that disturbed you. Being seen is dangerous when you are hiding from yourself. If she recognized your potential, your flaws, or your contradictions, she may have awakened both pride and fear simultaneously. Pride because someone noticed, fear because someone noticed. That internal conflict creates psychological tension, and tension seeks release. Until that tension is resolved internally, the mind keeps her alive as the focal point of that conflict. Another layer lies in attachment and identity. Stoicism teaches that attaching your sense of worth to anything external is a path to suffering. If her presence influenced how you saw yourself, more confident, more alive, more powerful, or more insecure, then your identity became partially anchored to her. When she left or became distant, it felt like a loss of self, not just a loss of connection. The mind panics when identity is threatened. It clings, replays, and analyzes, searching for the missing piece. Disruption of balance also occurs when she challenged your self-image. Perhaps you believed you were emotionally independent, unaffected, disciplined. Her impact proved otherwise. That realization alone can haunt the mind. The ego resists evidence of weakness. Instead of accepting the lesson, it obsesses over the source. She becomes the reminder that you were not as invulnerable as you believed, and the ego hates reminders of vulnerability. Stoic psychology emphasizes accepting reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. When a woman leaves a strong imprint on your mind, it often means you are resisting acceptance. You are fighting the fact that she affected you. You are fighting the truth that something within you was moved. That resistance fuels obsession. Acceptance dissolves it. But acceptance requires humility, and humility requires confronting uncomfortable truths about your emotional state. There is also the role of anticipation and imagination. Once balance is disrupted, the mind creates scenarios: what could have been said, what could have happened, what might still happen. Stoics warned against living in imagined futures or rewritten pasts because they rob the present of peace. When she triggered emotional imbalance, your mind may have slipped into this trap, replaying possibilities instead of grounding itself in reality. The imagined version of her often becomes more powerful than the real one because imagination is shaped by unmet desire and unresolved emotion. Control is another key element. The Stoics believed that true freedom comes from controlling what is within your power and releasing what is not. If she left without closure or if her behavior felt unpredictable, your sense of control was threatened. The mind hates uncertainty, it seeks patterns, it seeks explanations. When it cannot find them externally, it loops internally. She becomes the unsolved equation your mind keeps returning to, hoping for clarity. But the truth is deeper and more uncomfortable. She disrupted your balance because she revealed something about you that you had not fully faced. Perhaps you are more emotionally dependent than you admit. Perhaps you crave connection more than you allow yourself to acknowledge. Perhaps you fear abandonment more than you present to the world. Stoic philosophy would not shame you for this. It would challenge you to confront it calmly and rationally. The mind does not obsess to torture you. It obsesses to teach you. Every recurring thought about her is an invitation to self-examination. What emotion did she awaken? Why did it remain unresolved? What belief about yourself was challenged? Until those questions are answered honestly, the mind will keep returning to her as a symbol, not a person. Balance is restored not by forgetting her, but by understanding yourself. When you reclaim emotional sovereignty, when you accept that your reaction was human but your response is your responsibility, her power over your mind fades naturally. Not through force, not through distraction, through clarity. In Stoic terms, she was an external event. Your disturbance was internal. Once you separate the two, once you stop assigning meaning to her presence or absence, the mind regains equilibrium. And when equilibrium returns, she no longer needs to occupy your thoughts. Not because she was unimportant, but because her lesson has been integrated. She stayed in your mind because she shook your foundation. Foundations that are strong do not fear earthquakes, they absorb them. If she remains, it is not a curse. It is a signal that something within you needs strengthening. And once that work is done, the mind, calm and disciplined, releases what it no longer needs to hold. She remains because she did not fully submit emotionally, and this is where the mind becomes trapped in its own unfinished business. Human psychology is deeply wired around completion. We crave conclusions, certainty, and closure not because we are weak, but because the brain is designed to resolve tension. Stoic philosophy understood this long before modern psychology gave it names. The mind suffers most not from loss, but from ambiguity. When a woman exits your life without emotional resolution, she does not leave a memory behind, she leaves an open loop. And open loops dominate attention. When something ends cleanly, the mind categorizes it, learns from it, and moves on. But when something ends without clarity, without full emotional surrender, without a clear rejection, without a definitive ending, the mind refuses to file it away. Instead, it keeps it active, replaying it like an unsolved riddle. She didn't fully choose you, but she didn't fully reject you either. She didn't give certainty. And uncertainty is the most addictive psychological state there is. Stoic thinkers warned against attaching peace to external outcomes. Yet when emotional uncertainty enters your life, it challenges that discipline directly. The ego wants to know where it stands. It wants validation, confirmation, proof of worth. When she remained emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, or selectively open, she unknowingly triggered the ego's deepest vulnerability, the fear of being insignificant. The mind then becomes obsessed not with her affection but with what her lack of emotional submission implies about you. This is why rejection often hurts less than ambiguity. A clear no allows the ego to recover. An unclear maybe keeps it wounded. Her emotional distance forces your mind to ask questions it doesn't want to confront. Was I not enough? Did I misread everything? Could I have done something differently? The Stoics would say these questions are dangerous because they place your peace in the hands of another person's behavior. Yet the mind asks them anyway because it is seeking to restore certainty. There is also the role of intermittent reinforcement. When emotional availability is inconsistent, warm one moment, distant the next, the brain becomes conditioned to chase the reward. This is not romance, it is conditioning. The mind learns that effort might lead to connection, and so it keeps trying internally even when the person is gone. Stoic philosophy teaches that dependence on unpredictable externals leads to suffering, yet most people fall into this trap without realizing it. She did not fully submit emotionally, which means she never allowed you to feel secure. Security is calming. Insecurity is stimulating. The brain confuses stimulation with significance. When something disrupts your emotional stability, it feels important, even if it is unhealthy. Your mind elevates her not because she gave you peace, but because she denied it. And denial sharpens focus. The ego also plays a critical role here. Ego is not arrogance, it is identity protection. When she withheld emotional surrender, your ego perceived a challenge, not a romantic one, but an existential one. The mind interprets emotional withholding as a judgment of worth. Whether that judgment is real or imagined does not matter. The effect is the same. Your ego feels tested. And the ego does not walk away from tests, it obsesses over them. Stoicism emphasizes mastery over desire. Desire intensifies when it is obstructed. When she did not fully give herself emotionally, she became an obstacle. And obstacles ignite desire more powerfully than availability ever could. The mind is drawn to what resists it because resistance suggests value. If something is difficult to obtain, the mind assumes it must be valuable. This is a cognitive illusion, but it is a powerful one. There is also the illusion of potential. When emotional submission is incomplete, the mind fills the gaps with imagination. You don't miss who she was, you miss who she could have been. The Stoics warned against living in imagined futures because they create suffering without substance. Yet the mind does it instinctively. It constructs a version of her that aligns with your unmet needs, your hopes, your unresolved desires. That imagined version becomes far more compelling than reality ever was. This is why her absence feels louder than her presence. When she was there, reality limited her. When she left, imagination freed her. The mind now interacts with a version of her that never disappoints, never contradicts itself, never fully rejects you. And that illusion becomes difficult to let go of, because letting it go means accepting that the potential was never real. Another Stoic principle is accepting what is not within your control. Her emotional availability was never fully within your control, yet your mind may still attempt to solve it as if it were. This creates internal conflict. You replay conversations, analyze messages, search for hidden meanings, not because answers exist, but because the mind refuses to accept powerlessness. Obsession is often a refusal to accept limits. She also did not submit emotionally because she may have sensed your investment growing faster than hers. When emotional asymmetry appears, the one who cares more feels exposed. Exposure without reassurance creates anxiety. And anxiety fuels rumination. The mind loops because it feels unsafe. It is not longing for her, it is seeking emotional safety. Stoic psychology teaches that safety must come from within. When you outsource it to another person's behavior, you become vulnerable to obsession. Her unpredictability disrupted your sense of internal security. And until that security is rebuilt independently, the mind keeps her at the center of attention, hoping she will restore what only you can. There is also the matter of dignity. When someone does not fully choose you, it quietly wounds your dignity. Not in a dramatic way, but in a subtle one. The mind does not like unresolved wounds. It keeps returning to them, touching them, examining them, not to suffer but to understand. The tragedy is that understanding cannot come from her. It can only come from self-respect and acceptance. Stoicism does not encourage emotional numbness. It encourages emotional clarity. Clarity requires acknowledging that her lack of emotional submission says more about her internal state than your worth. But the ego resists this conclusion because it removes the illusion of control. It is easier for the mind to believe, I could have done something differently, than to accept, this was never mine to complete. Completion must come from within. Closure is not something another person gives you. It is something you grant yourself when you stop demanding certainty from what is uncertain by nature. When you stop trying to extract meaning from her emotional distance, the loop begins to close. She remains in your mind because she represents unanswered questions. But questions only hold power when you believe answers exist outside of you. Stoic wisdom reminds us that peace comes not from answers but from acceptance. Acceptance that not every story resolves the way we want. Acceptance that emotional submission cannot be forced. Acceptance that your value does not depend on being chosen. When that acceptance settles in, something profound happens. The mind no longer needs to revisit her. The tension dissolves. The loop closes. Not because she finally gave you clarity, but because you stopped asking her for it. And in that moment, the obsession fades not as a loss, but as a return to emotional sovereignty. She lingers because she represented a version of yourself you haven't mastered yet. And this is the most uncomfortable truth of all. Stoic philosophy teaches that we are disturbed not by people, but by the distance between who we are and who we believe we should be. When a woman stays in your mind long after she is gone, it is often because she awakened that gap. She did not simply attract you, she reflected something back to you, and reflections are harder to escape than memories. You may believe you think about her because she was special, rare, or different, but beneath that belief lies something deeper. She symbolized a standard, emotional, intellectual, or existential that exposed unfinished work within you. The mind fixates on what it has not yet resolved. In self-mastery, when incomplete, becomes the loudest unresolved project of all. Stoics believed that admiration often disguises envy, not of others, but of potential selves. When you encounter someone who embodies qualities you respect, discipline, confidence, independence, emotional intelligence, it forces you to confront whether you live up to those qualities yourself. If she carried herself with calm certainty, boundaries, and self-respect, your mind may have unconsciously measured itself against her. And measurement creates awareness. Awareness creates discomfort. She may have represented emotional maturity you aspire to but have not fully developed, or self-control you admire but struggle to maintain, or freedom from validation that you secretly crave. When someone lives in alignment with traits you lack, they become psychologically magnetic. Not because you want them, but because you want to become what they reflect. This is why her absence feels heavier than her presence ever was. While she was there, you could admire her externally. Once she left, the reflection turned inward. The mind now has nothing to focus on except the question she left behind: why did this affect me so deeply? Stoicism teaches that when something disturbs you, it is an invitation to examine yourself, not the external event. Another layer is the concept of unexpressed potential. You may feel that with her, you were closer to a better version of yourself, more focused, more motivated, more alive. That is not because she created that version of you, she revealed it. And once revealed, the mind cannot forget it. Losing her feels like losing access to that higher self, even though that self was always yours. This creates a dangerous illusion that she was the source of your growth. In reality, she was a catalyst. Stoics warned against confusing catalysts with causes. The cause of your reaction lies within you, but when the mind misattributes growth to another person, it attaches longing to them instead of responsibility to itself. She may also represent courage you have not fully claimed. Perhaps you were more honest around her, more emotionally open, more expressive. Perhaps you took risks you usually avoid. If her presence lowered your defenses, it revealed that your usual restraints are choices, not limitations. That realization is unsettling. The mind clings to her because she symbolizes the courage you temporarily accessed but did not sustain. There is also the issue of identity expansion. Stoic philosophy emphasizes consistency of character. When someone enters your life and temporarily expands how you see yourself, the loss of that expansion feels like contraction. The mind resists contraction. It replays her because it associates her with a broader sense of identity. Letting go of her feels like shrinking, even though true growth must come from internal discipline, not external inspiration. She may have challenged your beliefs about relationships, about yourself, about what you deserve. If she did not need you, chase you, or depend on you, she may have destabilized narratives you relied on for self-worth. That destabilization forces growth, but growth is uncomfortable. The mind often prefers familiarity over improvement. So instead of evolving, it obsesses. Stoicism teaches that discomfort is not an enemy. It is evidence of progress. But when progress is resisted, discomfort turns into fixation. She remains in your thoughts because your mind is standing at the edge of growth, hesitating to step forward. It would rather look backward at her than forward at the work required. There is also the shadow aspect. Carl Jung later expanded on ideas Stoics hinted at, that we are drawn to people who carry traits we have suppressed. She may have embodied spontaneity, emotional depth, or vulnerability you deny yourself. Seeing those traits expressed freely can feel intoxicating, but it can also feel threatening because it challenges the persona you have constructed to survive. If you built your identity around control, logic, or emotional restraint, her emotional depth may have unsettled you. If you built your identity around strength, her softness may have disarmed you. If you built your identity around independence, her detachment may have mirrored it back to you in a way you did not expect. In each case, the mind fixates not on her, but on the parts of you she activated. Stoics believed that the goal of life is alignment with virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control. When someone reveals gaps in that alignment, they become unforgettable until the gaps are addressed. She is not haunting you. She is pointing to unfinished discipline. There is also regret, not necessarily regret about her, but regret about yourself. Things unsaid, boundaries not held, authenticity delayed. The mind replays moments because it wishes to rewrite them. Stoicism warns that living in regret is a refusal to accept the present, but regret persists when lessons are not fully integrated. She may symbolize a moment when you acted below your values or above them. Either way, the mind fixates because it wants coherence. It wants your actions to align with your self-image. Until that alignment is restored through growth, forgiveness, or change, she remains a reminder of misalignment. The most difficult truth is this: she stayed in your mind because she raised the standard for what you want from yourself. And standards once raised cannot be lowered without psychological cost. You cannot unsee what you saw in yourself around her. You cannot return to who you were before awareness. Stoic mastery is not about erasing desire, memory, or attachment. It is about transforming them into wisdom. When you understand that she was a teacher, not a destination, the fixation begins to loosen. When you stop asking why she mattered and start asking what she revealed, the mind shifts from obsession to integration. Growth demands responsibility, responsibility demands action, and action demands courage. The mind clings to her because clinging is easier than changing. But Stoicism is clear. The only path to peace is through self-mastery. When you begin to embody the traits you admired in her, discipline, self-respect, emotional clarity, the psychological grip weakens. Not because she loses value, but because you no longer need the reflection. You become the source. She represented who you could be, and once you step into that identity fully, her role is complete. The mind releases what has served its purpose. She does not leave your mind because you are weak. She stays because you are unfinished. And the moment you commit to finishing the work calmly, deliberately, without resentment, the mind grows quiet. Not empty, grounded. That silence is not loss. It is integration. It is strength. It is the quiet confidence of a person who no longer needs external symbols to remember who they are becoming.